Peter.
Kayleigh, I want to ask you just a couple of questions. The first one, why is the president so supportive of flying the Confederate flag?
So I think you're referring to a tweet this morning, is that right?
Correct.
Well, I think you're mischaracterizing the tweet. The tweet was aimed at pointing out that the FBI report of the alleged hate crime at NASCAR concluded that the garage door pull, which had been there since last fall, was obviously not targeted at a specific individual because in fact it was a garage pull, and in fact it was there since last fall, long before these 43 teams arrived, and it was concluded by the FBI that this was, quote, not an intentional racist act.
For clarity, I'm asking you about the Confederate flag. So my question is, why is the president so supportive of flying the Confederate flag?
The president never said that. Again, you're taking his tweet completely out of context.
The president said that NASCAR saw bad ratings because they took down the Confederate flag, banned the Confederate flag. Does he believe NASCAR should fly the Confederate flag, and why don't they fly it here?
The whole point of the tweet was to note the incident, the alleged hate crime, that it in fact was not a hate crime. At the very end, the ban on the flag was mentioned in the broader context of the fact that he rejects this notion that somehow NASCAR men and women who go to these sporting events are racist, when in fact, as it turns out, what we saw with the FBI report and the alleged incident of a hate crime, it was a complete indictment of the media's rush to judgment, once again calling this a hate crime when the FBI completely dismissed it.
To follow up on Peter's question, what is the president's position? Does he think NASCAR made a mistake by banning the Confederate flag?
So he said I spoke to him this morning about this, and he said he was not making a judgment one way or the other. The intent of the tweet was to stand up for the men and women of NASCAR and the fans and those who have gone in this rush to judgment of the media to call something a hate crime when in fact the FBI report concluded this was not an intentional racist act. And it very much mirrors other times when there have been a rush to judgment, let's say with the Covington boys or with Jesse Smollett.
But let's drill down on the Confederate flag. Does he think it was a mistake for NASCAR to ban it?
The president said he wasn't making a judgment one way or the other.
What is
You're
his position
focusing
on
on one word at the very bottom of a tweet that's completely taken out of context and neglecting the complete rush to judgment.
Wasn't he saying that NASCAR's ratings are down because they banned the flag? That's what he said.
The president was noting the fact that in aggregate, this notion that NASCAR men and women who have gone and who are being demeaned and called racist and being accused in some venues of committing a hate crime against an individual, those allegations were just dead wrong.
Does he think
Paula.
does he think his supporters should not take the flag to Trump rallies? Has he considered banning the Confederate flag from Trump
Well,
rallies?
at Trump rallies, all flags that are not official campaign gear are banned. Yes.
Kayleigh, why is it Bubba Wallace's responsibility to apologize for an investigation into a noose that he didn't report and he never even saw? It was NASCAR that found this, that reported this, and even the FBI referred to it as a noose, even if they said it wasn't a specific crime against Mr. Wallace. Why is the president even suggesting that Mr. Wallace should apologize?
Well, look, the FBI, as I noted, concluded that this was not a hate crime, and he believes it'd go a long way if Bubba came out and acknowledged that as well. This was not a hate crime as noted by the
He's been very
FBI.
clear that the FBI found this was not intentional. Why is he directing this at Mr. Wallace?
So one of the things this is where the president comes from, and this is where the president stands. And he actually hinted at this in his July 4th speech. To those in the media who falsely and consistently label their opponents as racist, who condemn patriotic citizens, who offer a clear and truthful defense of American unity, we want a clear and faithful defense of American history and unity. And when you level false charges, you not only slander me, you slander the American people. He believes the American people are good. And the allegations and the rush to judgment with Jesse Smollett in the Bubba Wallace case and with the Covington Catholic boys, we shouldn't be so quick to jump onto those narratives. Those are just three examples of those that have been proven false.
Investigation that someone else initiated, suggesting he was possibly the victim of a hate crime?
Yes.
NASCAR thing. You were saying that we're taking the tweet out of context, but this is what he tweeted. He says, has Bubba Wallace apologized to all those great NASCAR drivers and officials who came to his aid, stood by his side, and were willing to sacrifice everything for him, only to find out that the whole thing was just another hoax. That and flag decision has caused lowest ratings ever. How are we misinterpreting that?
I've explained to you, this is I guess, the fourth attempt, but we'll try it again. In aggregate, what he was pointing out is this rush to judgment to immediately say that there is a hate crime, as happened in this case, as happened with Jussie Smollett, as happened with the Covington Catholic boys. And in aggregate, those actions made it seem like NASCAR men and women were racist individuals who were roving around and engaging in a hate crime. The president's intent was to say, no, most American people are good, hardworking people. I mean, we should not have this rush to judgment, knee-jerk reaction before the facts come out. The FBI did their job and determined there was no hate crime. Mario.
Hold on. Just the one thing that wasn't clear in your response, and that's why I asked about it again, and it follows up on Paula's question, is why should Mr. Wallace have to apologize for that when his whole team and all of these colleagues came around him to show support?
Yeah, and that's the best of America, is coming around when the media alleged a hate crime, coming around and supporting Bubba Wallace as they should have done. I think that shows how loving NASCAR fans are and the fellow drivers. But I think it's important that we point out the fact that there was no hate crime. The FBI concluded that, and President Trump was merely saying that Mr. Wallace should agree with that consensus. Yes, Mario.
Apologize. He's saying
Mario,
he has to
yes.
apologize. That's what we're trying to ask you, Kayleigh, is why should he
Mario,
have to apologize
yes.
about that?
I'm not going to answer a question a sixth time. Mario.
You've been asked it, but you haven't answered.
Mario, go ahead.
Kayleigh, on the Confederate part, why would the president not praise NASCAR for removing the Confederate flag, particularly given the history of that flag, the symbol that it has for African Americans, and also what it represents in terms of just the treasonous acts and the insurrection against the Republic?
So
why would he not praise them for taking that down, even if it's a ratings
the
hit?
president takes great offense when Americans are knee-jerk reaction summed up as racist. And in aggregate, the picture being painted here in this incident seemed to be that there was that suggestion there, when in fact what we're seeing across the nation is this vast cancel culture where we're going to tear down our monuments, we're going to tear down Gandhi, we're going to tear down George Washington, we're going to tear down Lincoln. It's really quite appalling what we've seen happen across the country, and the president wants no part in cancel culture. He wants no part in the tearing down and defacing of Matthias Baldwin, an abolitionist, Philadelphia's Civil War soldiers, John Greenleaf Whittier, vandalized, an abolitionist. He wants no part in this. He stands against the demonization of Americans, and he stands firmly on the side of preserving our history. Yes.
The flag is a different issue.
He's not, I said from the very top of this briefing, he has not given an opinion one way or the other on that. I just spoke to him this morning. Yes.
What exactly does the president see as positive or uniting then about the Confederate flag? Why did he decide to tweet about it then this morning?
The president never used those words. Those are the words of a reporter, not that of the president of the United States. Yes, Phil.
The president argued on Friday and then again on Saturday that many of the problems the country faces stem from, quote, extreme indoctrination and bias in the education system. If that's the case, is he working with Secretary DeVos to address what he sees as a major problem? What steps is he taking to undertake this, and could you give us an example?
Yeah, I'd have to inquire about that, about specific steps that he's taken. I'm not aware of his conversations with Secretary DeVos, but I will certainly follow up. But look, we've got a real problem in this country. When you have rioters, who I've listed off some of the examples of abolitionists, there seems to be zero understanding of history when you're defacing the statue of Matthias Baldwin and John Whittier and Ulysses S. Grant. There seems to be a lack of understanding and historical knowledge when the Armenian Genocide Memorial, remembering victims of all crimes against humanity, including slavery, is vandalized. There seems to be a lack of understanding of history when the first responders sculpture is damaged, when the Polish War Hero statue, the World War I Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, the World War II Memorial, and absolutely the Robert Good Shaw and the 54th Regiment Washington Memorial that honored African American soldiers who fought valiantly in the Civil War was damaged in Boston. We need to have a better historical understanding, and I'll follow up with you about specific conversations.
Thank you, Kayleigh. I wanted to say, first off, point of fact, Bubba Wallace did not make any kind of false report. And I'm wondering, in general, why the president thinks that issue is worth his time and focus right now in the midst of a deadly pandemic. And then also, you've said he has no opinion on the Confederate flag. Why can't this White House unambiguously state whether or not it supports displays of the Confederate flag
No, I said,
and Confederate monuments?
I
which
said
are
in
much
his-
more a part of this question than Gandhi.
Yeah, I said that his tweet was not to indicate approval or disapproval of that particular policy of NASCAR. It was an aggregate to stand against the rush to judgment, to call something a hate crime before the facts were out, when clearly the media was wrong about this. When clearly,
report. He didn't.
I never said that. Perhaps one of the reporters said that, but I certainly did not. But he believes that we should be, that the truth matters, and that the truth was the FBI did a thorough investigation, and what was concluded that there was no hate crime here, and we should all be grateful for that, grateful that NASCAR fans came together in a great display of American unity around Mr. Wallace, but then we should also be equally unequivocal about the truth of this situation here, and that most Americans are great, hardworking people. Yes.
Cultural stuff worth his time and
Yes.
focus during the pandemic.
Yes, he's focused on two things at once, something we're all capable of doing.
And what about an
Yeah.
unambiguous statement on the Confederate flag? Are we capable of doing that?
Look, the president has made clear he was not taking a position one way or the other in that tweet.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, why not?
Yes.
Thanks, Barry. Two quick questions, if I may. Does the president support the Cleveland Indians and the football team here in Washington considering changing their names?
I haven't spoken to the president on that.
And the other question, who came up with the list of historical figures that the president wants honored in his in this garden of statues that he put out this executive order about? Who came up with the list of people to be included there?
So I don't know exactly who came up with that list. I can ask about it, but it's a pretty extraordinary list of people. I think we can all agree on the fact that great American heroes are people like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington and Martin Luther King Jr. These are incredible men and women in our history, Susan B. Anthony and Billy Graham. So I think we can all pretty much widely acknowledge that these are American heroes. Probably 12 questions about the Confederate flag. This president's focused on action, and I'm a little dismayed that I didn't receive one question on the deaths that we got in this country this weekend. I didn't receive one question about New York City shootings doubling for the third straight week, and over the last 7 days, shootings skyrocket by 142%. Not one question. I didn't receive one question about 5 children who were killed, and I'll leave you with this remark by a dad. It broke my heart. A dad of an 8-year-old lost in Atlanta this weekend. They say Black Lives Matters. You killed a child. She didn't do nothing to nobody, was his quote. We need to be focused on securing our streets, making sure no lives are lost, because all Black lives matter. That of David Dorn and that of this 8-year-old girl. Thank you.